Oh, no, no, I gotta get honey badger. Hey everyone, welcome to episode 146 of the Laravel News Podcast. For those of you hanging out with us live, thanks so much for staying up late if you're in the US, or thanks for taking your lunch break if you're on the other side of the world with Mr. Dorinda. And if you're anywhere in between, thanks for spending a little bit of time with us, regardless of what time it is. I'm over time zones. Yeah?
Yeah,
It's universal time. Let's go universal time, shall we?
that's right. right now
We've talked about it
is
before, I
2
think.
o'clock or something in the morning UTC. So there you go.
Yeah. There we go. There we go. Hey, top of the show, want to give a quick shout out to Honey Badger for sponsoring the show today. We've had them on before, I believe, but they're coming back to us. So we're very thankful to have them sponsoring the show. They do awesome error monitoring, and you'll hear a little bit about them later in the show. Well, hey, you told me not to say it, but I feel like I'm kind of obligated to do it. Should I? Dare I?
Don't do it. You're going to
Dare
double
I
the length
say
of the
it?
show just by saying it.
Oh boy, I gotta say it. It's gonna be a short one, folks.
Bad
I went for it.
man.
Hey, well, let me count. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 7, 8 things we're talking about. So I don't know. Maybe it's just when I say that we end up talking about stuff longer because we figure we have more time. So I don't know. We'll find out. We will find out. So hey, shall we jump right into it then, my friend?
Let's do it.
All right. 8.49 was released with a logging context method that adds the same contextual information to subsequent logs during a request. Ooh, this is interesting. So Alex Harris contributed a new with context method to logging instances in order to add more detail to subsequent requests. So Taylor talked about this on Twitter. He basically said exactly that. And there is a link to the pull request inside of his little Twitter tweet there. So here's the deal. Let's say you want to correlate various logs together. So maybe you have a class, and then you have another class that's being called, and then you have another class that's being called below that, right? You want to correlate the various logs together using some unique identifier. Well, in the past, you could use something like the Laravel session ID to track that same user across logs. But here's a new example using the log with context method. So all you'd need to do is you would say log : with context, request ID equals request ID, right? Where you have, in this case, they just generated a unique ID. And then you can use that within your application to associate all those logs together. Really, really interesting. There is already a section of the logging documentation, a section for this new contextual information logging inside of the documentation if you'd like more details. So it looks pretty cool. A great way to be able to associate those logs together, especially if you have a very busy application. You're not going to be able to necessarily guarantee that those logs are just going to be neatly grouped together if you have a lot of traffic, right? So get status text from an Illuminate response. Taylor McGuire created an accessor method, status text, to get the protected status text property from the response instance. So if you've never ever needed to get these status text from the response instance, now you can do this really easily. So you have, for example, they have here response equals new response foo, and then set status code is 404, and then you can now say something like response status text and get not found or something like that. So if you've ever needed to get that, now you can really easily. So thank you very much, Taylor McGuire. We also have this sort by route resolution order in the route list command. So Antonio Carlos Ribeiro contributed a new option to sort routes by resolution order. That is the order in which they were resolved or which they are being resolved. The default sort is by URI. So I believe it's alphabetical, possibly by default. And with this new option, this could be more helpful in the case that you're trying to debug which route will resolve first. So with this now, you just call it PHP artisan route : list -- sort. And then the valid options are domain, method, URI, name, action, and then now precedence. So precedence is what you would use in that case. Oh, I forgot middleware. You could also sort them in order by middleware. But now you have precedence, which will tell you in which order they resolve. So there you go. The full list of new features and updates are in the diff between 8.48 and 8.49 on GitHub. And if you happen to hear some little dinging in the background there, that is my washing machine. So there you have it. Hashtag real life.
I hear nothing.
Do you hear
nothing.
it? Can you hear it? You can't hear it? Okay. It's a pretty little song it plays. Wakes me up sometimes in the middle of the night. I typically, you throw a load in before you go to bed. And then at, 1 a.m., I hear the little dinging.
The happy song. Yeah, ours does the same thing. It's the happy finish song. So I don't know if it's the same song, but it certainly plays its happy song when it's finished.
Yeah, it might be, might not be.
That route resolution ordering is very handy, especially if you're perhaps new to the framework and you're not sort of, you can get caught out by putting your route definitions in the wrong order, and you're
For
hitting
sure.
like /create instead of an ID because you've got those the wrong way around. So
Yep.
definitely handy to do that. Thanks to Antonio for that one.
Absolutely. Especially it can especially get complicated with when you have like routing groups and things like that as well. Or if you break them up into multiple locations. So yeah, that's a good one. Nice job on that. The logging with context is also pretty hot like that too.
Yeah, it's good.
Okay,
So
on to you, my
that's
friend.
it for releases. So I guess we're going to talk packages. We don't really have any news to speak of. Actually, you know what? One thing, there is no article about this, I don't think, but I think it bears mentioning that Laravel announced during the week that they're going to be moving the release cycle for the new major versions. So previously we were doing like a February and a September release. And then now that the framework is kind of more mature and it doesn't really warrant that extra release cycle. We're slowing things down a little bit. We're following semantic versioning. We're putting, backwards compatible changes into minor releases and things like that. Laravel 9 was slated to release in September of 2021. That's been pushed back now because I think the Symfony version 6 is due out in November or something like that. Mm-hmm. So Taylor announced on Twitter this week that they're going to shift the annual major release to February, just so that it gives them a couple of months to bring in those changes from Symfony V's, the new Symfony release, to make sure everything's working. As a result of that, as I said, we've pushed back from September to next February. So from September 2021 to February 2022. So that's the next time. That's when we'll see Laravel 9. And as a result of depending on version 6 of the Symfony components, it also means that Laravel 9 is going to require PHP 8 as a minimum. Okay. So you've got an extra couple of months to sort of prepare for that. If you're still on Laravel,
package maintainers as well.
Yeah. Package maintainers and things like that, get your applications and your packages and all that stuff ready to move to version 8 of PHP and support that. That'll mean, cleaning up a lot of bits and pieces here and there. It gives you access to constructor property promotion and named arguments and things like that. Match the match statement and things like that. It helps you clean up if statements and switch blocks and things like that. So
for sure, yeah,
just a little PSA there. Worth noting that the next version of Laravel has been pushed back now until of February of next year. So
good call on that one. Hey, real quick, before we move forward, can I jump back real fast to that contextual information thing? So I said that wrong, and so I'm going to go back and correct this. We don't have to change the order in the podcast. I get things wrong. It happens, right? I mean, I'm human, so sue me. Also, yeah, so here we go. So contextual information. So if you've ever wanted to, you do log : info, and then you put like a little log message, right? But then as a second argument, you can put an array of data that will then be included in that log. So for example, you might want to put the user ID, right? So you'd pass an array where it says ID, and then you fat arrow user ID. And now when you have this log info, it's going to say user failed to log in, and then it's going to provide for you some contextual information to go along with that you might need in order to be able to debug that piece of logged status there, right? So the idea with this contextual information that was the new pull request is that there may be occasions where you want to include contextual information for any other items within that life cycle for any other logs that happen down the line, right? So it may be that you would say log with context, user ID equals user fat arrow ID or user arrow ID. And then whenever you log any statements from that point on, that user ID will always be included in the contextual information for any logs that you push, which makes way more sense than the way that I was describing it. So it may be something like a request ID, right? It's like if you just assign a unique ID, the way that they're doing it in the docs is in a middleware. Like as soon as you hit the application, you have this assign request ID middleware, and they generate this unique ID, and then they say basically tag any log that comes in with this unique request ID. That way, you can in your logs search by that request ID and then say these are all the logs that came in during that request, which is interesting. So that's what it's doing. You basically can say globally, hey, any logs that happen from here until we actually kill PHP again, log every time with this additional context included in that log statement, which is very cool. I will definitely be using that.
Yeah, definitely handy if you're trying to trace a specific user or a specific session or whatever through your application. Because
For sure.
if you have a log message that just says, got here or reached user endpoint, reached user profile, whatever, without the context, you're basically seeing the same message. So if two people hit your application at the same time, you don't know if you're
Right.
tracking your request flow or someone else's request flow. So putting
Yep.
the context in there, at least you can tie it to a single request ID or a single session ID or whatever. And that way it makes it much easier to track through your code following a single execution. So yeah, that is definitely a handy feature. Just speaking of things that were incorrect, like the Laravel 9 release will be in January, not February. So off by one.
No worries. It happens, right?
All right. Now on to packages, I guess. The first one we have here is a package called Version Control for Laravel, which is a package that provides database version control for your Eloquent models. The package works by creating a separate *_versions database table that corresponds with the model. So for example, if you wanted to version your user model, you would have a users table and you would have a users_versions table. So in order to make this work, you start by extending the package's base model for models you'd like to include in version control. So instead of extending from the Eloquent model, you'd extend from this package's base model. And then you would create some tables, 2 tables for this. So this just goes into your database migration. You can make VC, so make version control tables, and you give it the user the table name, and that will handle doing all of that stuff for you. And then you tell it, what are we doing?
That's what I was curious
Which
about too.
fields you want to do? Yeah. So make VC tables will create the users table, and it takes 2 arguments. And then you can just say to retrieve the model versions, you can use the model versions method. I suspect that second closure that you pass, the first is the definition of the users table. The second will be what you're versioning in that versions table. So if the email changes or the password changes, you could track that. So
I'm curious though, like where does the version live? Right? It's like where does I don't see any. I guess that's where make VC tables comes in, right? The make VC tables method that you're going to use inside of your migration is going to probably handle behind the scenes some sort of like, hey, here's the version that you're currently on, and probably only for that secondary table that they're going to create.
Correct.
So a little bit of magic going on there that's not necessarily explained in here, but it is interesting that basically all you'll have to do in that case would be say user versions, and then you could retrieve any of the previous versions that have existed for that user or for the whatever other model you'd have to do.
Yeah. Correct. So I was just having a quick look through what the package itself is doing. Basically, yeah, that is what it is doing.
And it actually says, I'm sorry, in the top of it does say that you have a *_versions database table. So in this case, it'd be user_versions. You might have already said that. If you had like posts, you're like, yes, I did. If you had posts, it'd be posts_versions. I can't imagine posts would be changing that often, but yeah, this is users is an interesting one. I actually have needed to do this recently, and we use Spassy's. Spassy has a package that's
log?
like. That's it, activity log. Yeah, but you can't like just grab versions off of that. You can look at it, like it's sort of helpful for like me as a administrator sort of deal. But just to be able to say, hey, versions and get those all out is pretty handy.
Yeah, so this package will create some additional columns in your table. So it'll create a UID for the key for the table itself. It'll create a version UID, so you know that you're tracking this version against the version data and which is the active version. And then it will specify the parent in there as well. So it'll take care of all of that stuff for you. Anyway, it's magical. It will handle versioning. It may or may not be the solution that you need, but definitely check that out. Thanks very much to Red Snapper Limited.
I am curious. Um, I'm not sure if there's a way to do this in the case that you're not setting it up initially like this. That'd be the only concern, right? Does this integrate into an existing application?
Well, you'd have to go and
Um,
backport the
I guess
extra fields.
suppose, yeah, right. You'd pretty much just have to make it up on your own. You'd have to go dig into the source code and say,
Mhm.
okay, what is the new table? What's the other table have to look like? And then you just extend that other base model,
Yeah,
right?
yeah. It
Yeah,
also
interesting.
it also does give the ability to anonymize fields that are versioned, so you don't see what they actually are, but you'll
Ah,
know that they
interesting.
have been changed. So if you are
Gotcha.
concerned about that, then that is taken care for you. It does suggest that it meets GXP compliance, whatever that is.
This is actually, man, now that I'm thinking about this, this could be really, really helpful for a couple of reasons. Right now, we have an application where we have claims come in from clients, and then our data entry teams will analyze those claims. Not sure who you're waving at. Me? You waving at me? Who you waving at? No,
No,
you're not waving at me.
Eli's watching in the other room, so I waved to
Oh,
Eli.
nice. Oh, gotcha. Okay. Hi, Eli. Um, but we have these claims that come in. Our data entry teams manually look at those and change things. But if our clients are ever like, "Hey, that's not what I sent over," we have no way to know because
Mhm.
it's been changed, it's been updated, and we don't ever keep the original copy. Um, but this is interesting. I might have to look into this. Okay, copy paste into our Slack channel. Thank you, sir. All
Done.
right, done. Laravel auto routes package. So this is an interesting one by Isni Barak Demirtas that generates routes from a controller using auto discovery. So what this does is it'll take a look at your controller and it will look at any public methods that you have on that controller, and then it will generate routes for them. So let's say that you have a control. So I'm going to go ahead and say, if you're following like maybe conventions or best practices, I say best practices, quote unquote, right?
Mm-hmm.
But like most of the time, you're going to want to only have like restful actions, restful verbs, like as public methods inside of your controllers.
Mm-hmm.
Um, do you typically follow that convention, Michael? And here's why I'll say that I typically do that. It can get really messy really quick if you don't follow a convention like that.
Mm-hmm.
You just kind of get this wild west sort of sling methods around. And again, like private methods, go for it. Like go ahead and use a private
Mm.
method inside your controller. That's fine.
Yeah.
But public methods, maybe not as much.
Yeah. Anything that is picked up in like from a route will be one of those 7 methods. So show, create, store, update, etc.
Index. Yeah, right.
Index. I'm not beyond putting in like a private method to handle some ancillary
Totally.
operation or to sort of compact a controller. More recently, I mean, it depends on the application. Bigger applications, I might find myself doing like custom collections or other DTOs and things like that, just to extract some of that functionality away from the controller.
Uh-huh.
But generally, I'm following convention for pretty much everything unless I'm using an invocable.
Yeah, I agree with that. Yeah, the private method things, like typically where I'll use that is if it's just something where I want to make it a little bit more readable. There's 100 different places to tuck those things in, right? You could do it in a
Yeah.
form request object. You could do it in the controller. You can do it in, a custom collection like you're talking about. But yeah, those are typically going to be private. So when we're talking about this package, what it's doing is it's looking across all your different public methods on a controller and then generating a route from them. Here's some of the examples that they give. Get foobar, um, post bar bash, right? Just any public method that you might have in this case. And you'll notice that in those ones, I talked, or when I said those, the name of the method was prefixed with a verb like get, like
Mm-hmm.
get foobar or post bar baz. And so what these will do is these will be used to hint to this route auto generator what verb to use when it's generating the routes. So the route method also takes a third argument to configure parameters and middlewares. But what you do is you just say route auto, and then you just say /test, which I believe is sort of like a namespace to it.
Mm-hmm.
And then you pass in the name of the controller. And then what this will do is this will go ahead and automatically generate those routes for you using that first word on the public method name, like get or post or whatever, and then the following words after, like barbaz, right? Or foobar. And so in that case, it would make a route for you at test slash foobar, and it would be a get request, able to be accessible through there. So in addition to that, you can, like I said, just like you would with a normal route definition inside your web.php file or something like that, you can pass additional middlewares, or you can pass parameters that will become available to your methods. Here's what this really reminds me of. This reminds me of, or feels like, somebody who's coming from CodeIgniter and is missing that behavior and wants to push it into
conventional
Laravel.
routing.
Because because that's what it was, right? Exactly. It was that conventional routing where you had, like, based on the naming of your route, it would handle it in a particular way. And, that's just kind of how it worked, which was great until it wasn't. But there you go. So it's a disclaimer here. It says, well, most developers are happy with Laravel's built-in routing definitions. It's a unique idea with examples in the source code of working with PHP's reflection API and the Laravel router. So, use it if you want. It's sharp knives. Use sharp knives, or provide whatever, right? You can get hurt with them, but if you have a use for it and it feels like something you want to do, go for it. Who am I? Who am I to judge you? Go for it.
Who are you?
Who am I? Nobody.
Perfect.
I'm a somebody, but to me. Oh my, this is going off the rails. This is going off the rails.
That's what your mother tells you. You're somebody, Jake.
Hey, you know what? Like, I'm thankful. Like, what do they say? Like, and
Fig
like
jam.
no like insensitivity to, like, people who grew up without a mother or whatever, but like, I feel like our mothers do have a lot to do with, like, our current self-esteem, or, like, our identity about who we think we are. I think mothers have a good deal to do with that. So yeah, I do credit my mother with that, with my, like, confidence and I don't know, general like for myself, not to be weird about it, but, like, some people really struggle with that. I don't know. I mean, seriously, like, it's a thing, right? So I generally like myself for the most part. None of us are perfect, but whatever. Again, this is going off the rails. It's 11:50 and I've had one too many. So let's go.
Build UI dashboards for your jeez Louise. Build UI dashboards for your Laravel models. Model Stats for Laravel is a package written by Julian Nahum that gives you a statistics dashboard for your Laravel application. Users can build dashboards from the web UI without any coding knowledge using application models. Multiple data aggregation types can be used. For example, a daily count, a cumulated daily total, a period total, with more features to come. It gives you drag and drop resize widgets and a configurable authorization gate for non-local access to the dashboard. So similar to how Telescope, Horizon, all of those things, Nova, all do their access gates. And you can create your own widgets. It's using Vue 2, Tailwind, Chart.js, and some other front-end NPM packages. That's interesting. But you don't have to manage any of the UI assets for the packages. It installs all of them via the package setup command. So basically, you can just spin this up, spit it out into your application, and have your application users build their own widgets instead of harassing you for a new report every 5 minutes.
Thank God. Seriously. Yeah, well, the thing is, it doesn't actually create the report. No, does it? Does it create a report for you too?
Yeah, it gives you the UI to build out the widgets.
Well, right, it gives you the widgets, but as I'm looking at the screenshots, in the top right there is, like, a download button. Do you see that?
Yeah.
So, like, I wonder, maybe it does generate a report. I don't know. I mean, they're using the data, so that's pretty cool. That is really pretty cool. Oh boy, so much good stuff. Hey, you know what, Mr. Dorinda? I'm going to talk about one more thing here, and then I'm going to have you talk about our wonderful sponsors. Does that sound agreeable to you, my friend?
I agree to these terms.
Okay, let's do it. We have got the PHP League, which, by the way, there was a little bit of drama about the PHP League. Wasn't there?
Not dead. Feature complete.
Not dead.
And definitely actively maintained as necessary.
Yes, there was a little bit of the PHP League is dead, and then they were all to arms. We're not dead.
Can we talk about this? Just because a package has not
Let's hear it.
been actively developed does not mean it is not actively maintained.
True story.
A lot of the original impetus. Is this a word? Impetus? A lot of the
Yes.
original intent of the PHP League was to build framework agnostic packages that were maintained and that did their thing that they needed to do. So just because, Jonathan Rennick was responsible for the
I was gonna
glide
say.
package,
Yeah. Yep.
maybe it has, I haven't looked, right? But maybe it hasn't received an update for 3 months, 6 months, whatever. That doesn't mean that it's dead. It just means that it's feature complete. It does all of the
Mm-hmm.
things that when Jonathan built that package, it was intended to do. It resizes your images. It allows you to watermark it. It does whatever it needs to do. It doesn't need to constantly receive feature updates. And the maintainers go in there, and if there's security vulnerabilities with upstream or downstream upstream packages, if things need to be updated to function for different versions of PHP, that stuff still gets done. But we're only getting a new version of PHP every 12 months. So it's not like you need to be actively developing every package all the time. So shout out to Frank de Jong and Jonathan and Phil Sturgeon, who's not even part of the PHP community anymore, who got a lot of that off the ground. To all of those people that got the league off the ground, that built these great packages that are standing the test of time. We appreciate all of the hard work that you have done, and don't let the ill-informed get you down.
Indeed. So speaking of the league, this is about the Common Mark Markdown parser, which is now version 2 beta 3 released. So this is under the PHP League / Common Mark. So this has been released as of July. A stable release will be released as of July. And this package is a highly extensible, as are most of those packages from the league, a PHP Markdown parser, which fully supports the Common Mark and GFM specs. Now, I believe
Google
GFM.
flavored Markdown. No,
Thank
GitHub.
you.
GitHub flavored
GitHub.
Markdown.
I was going to say, not Google. Yeah. GitHub flavored Markdown. I knew it was GitHub, but I didn't know what the
so
F and the M was.
confident in that wrong answer.
So close. So close. And then Common Mark, I suppose, would be like Daring Fireball, like what he originally kind of set out there, or
no? So Daring Fireball, John Gruber, when he put out Markdown, it was just something he slapped together. He didn't put much thought into it. Common Mark is the
like the
community
standardization of the
that kind of like grabbed Markdown and standardized it, and its interpretation and formatting and transpilation, all of that kind of stuff. So Common Mark is seeking to standardize how Markdown is interpreted and what to do with it and things like that. So
yeah, so then you have some extra things in the GitHub flavored Markdown, but this supports both of them. So according to the beta announcement, here are some of the key improvements in version 2. Up to 50% faster and 21% less memory usage, especially when dealing with larger Markdown documents. 3 new extensions for front matter, description lists, default HTML attributes, new XML renderer to simplify AST debugging. They completely revamped the parsing engine for faster speed and more precise parsing controls, et cetera, et cetera. PSR 14. Psalm purity markers throughout the code base, lots more. So Colin Odell has asked for any current users to help test and provide feedback while they're in the beta period. And the Laravel framework relies heavily on Common Mark as a dependency, and Laravel users are highly encouraged to support this library by providing feedback and testing it out right now. So to help test this upcoming version, you can check out the beta version of the package by just by using the following composer command: composer require league / common mark : and then the caret 2.0 at beta. And if you do that, that will install the beta version so you can test it out in your application and give any helpful feedback that you need. There's also some value or some recommendations here to checking out the Common Mark changelog for full details on what's changed and new in version 2.0. And then there's also an upgrade guide from 1.6 to 2.0 that you'd want to read as well. So there you go.
Speaking of testing, when you are testing, you are going to find some errors. And let's face it, your code is going to have errors. And even code that is written by amazing developers such as yourself, you, the listener,
me.
When errors happen, it's nice to know that Honeybadger has your back. Honeybadger makes you a DevOps hero by combining error monitoring, uptime monitoring, and check-in monitoring into a single, easy-to-use platform. Honeybadger sends you alerts in real time with all the context you need to see what's causing the error and where it's hiding so you can quickly fix it and get on with your day. The included uptime and cron monitoring also lets you know when your external services are having issues or your background jobs go missing or silently fail. Go to honeybadger.io and discover how Star, Josh, and Ben created a 100% bootstrap monitoring solution. And why is this important, you may ask? Self funding means that they answer only to you, the developer, our dear listener, rather than a venture capital overlord. I've actually
Thank
been
God.
switching um, my side or my freelance project over to Honey Badger in the last sort of 3-4 weeks, just to give something new a spin. Just as these annual projects that I spin up and then go and set up Sentry and all of that every year. So I've been setting up Honey Badger this time around just to give it a go, and they have been quite good. Their free tier is quite generous, so you can definitely check that out and see how you go with this platform. Thanks to our friends at honeybadger.io for sponsoring the show.
Very nice. Thanks, Honey Badger. It's awesome. We've actually got this other package here called Spotlight. It's not called Spotlight. It's called Liveware UI Spotlight. Macs. We all like Macs, don't we? I think we do. If you don't like Macs, you probably like at least Alfred. Even if you're on a Windows machine, you can get Alfred. And Alfred is the stuff. But Livewire UI Spotlight is a Livewire component that provides a Spotlight or Alfred-like launcher to your applications. I could talk about this, and I'm going to, but Filio Hermans, the guy who created this, has a awesome little video animation that he put out on Twitter about how this works, and it's really cool. So you can think of it like, well, when you're on the Tailwind documentation site or the Laravel documentation site and you press slash and then you start typing and it will search through the docs. So you just press slash and it kind of pulls up their search. This is similar to that, but it's not just for searching through a set of data. You can actually define actions that you want people to be able to do inside of your application. So they can, I'm not exactly sure. I think you can set up whatever you'd like the shortcut key to be, but then it dims out the background and it brings up, this big text box where they can just start typing. And then you can have predefined things that they can do inside of there that you can use to dispatch actions. So at the heart of the package, it is, at the heart of using this package is creating Spotlight commands for applications that users can execute. So the README provides a snippet for logging a user out of the Spotlight component, logging the user out via the Spotlight component. So you just create a new class that extends the Spotlight command. Then you have the name that you're going to use to invoke that command, as well as a description that will help describe what it's going to do. And then you have an execute method, which will then take those, or take it when they invoke that and will actually do whatever you want it to do. So like guard log out and then redirect back to the home page. So Mac users are used to using command space to trigger Spotlight or Alfred. This component defaults to command or control K or command control slash. They are customizable, of course, from a published package configuration. And you can also trigger Spotlight programmatically in any Livewire component. So if you wanted to toggle the Spotlight on, you can do that by just calling this dispatch browser event toggle-spotlight. You can also do it within Alpine in your markup. So there's lots of use cases for these. It seems like it would make this maybe some hidden actions a little bit more accessible to power users and desktop, provide more of like a desktop-like experience for people who are used to, who are heavily using your app. And so this looks really, really nice. If you're using Liveware, using Alpine, using Laravel, this is a cool one. You definitely want to check this out. Yes. I use this stuff all the time. Like I use Basecamp. And I'm constantly using their little jump actions, so it's like Command J in Basecamp to jump around or do different things. And of course, I use Alfred all the time as well, right? All the time. And so it's kind of one of those things, like if your application is an application where people kind of live throughout the day, this is especially helpful if you're developing an application that's going to be used by like your internal teams, for example. Michael, I know that, you've done a lot of that at previous jobs, maybe even at the job you're at currently, where you are building applications for your staff in building, right? And they actually live in those applications all day long. Yeah. That's a perfect time to use something like this. There's a lot of things they do every day that they need to be able to navigate between pages quickly, and it's like way easier to be able to use a keyboard command shortcut rather than having to click around a navigational
UI, yeah.
UI to get there. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Very cool stuff.
Beautiful. The last thing that we have here is the ability to add Face ID and or Touch ID login to your Laravel apps. Fast Login is a plugin from Miguel Piedrafita that adds the sign in with Face ID/Touch ID to your web apps in less than 1 minute. I assume that doesn't take into account having to go through the rigmarole of setting up an Apple developer account, though. This package supports various physical or biometric authentication devices that allows your users to register physical authentication devices with Face ID or Touch ID on iPhones and Macs, Fingerprint on Android, Hello on Windows, and USB keys to skip entering their login credentials. The package takes care of almost everything you'll need to get this working in your app quickly, and the server side involves updating the user model with a can fast login trait, and the documentation outlines the front-end usage you'll need to implement Face ID and Touch ID logins. The example in the article that we have in the show notes is a Vue component by the looks, which gives you the functionality to log in using the fast login package. So kudos to Miguel. He's taking a break, according to his Twitter at the moment. But you can find more information about this package, get the full installation instructions, and view the source code on Google, GitHub.
This is an interesting
GitHub.
one. Yeah, Google/GitHub. I'm wondering if you have to have an Apple developer account to do this. I don't, because it's not like you're logging in with Apple, right? You're not saying I'm logging in with my Apple account. All this is doing is allowing you to use a physical authentication device.
Yeah, this looks like it's using the WebAuthn functionality that is browser native.
Yes. So it might be less than a minute. I mean, that'd be pretty freaking awesome if it was.
Yep. My mistake. I was confusing that with, I guess, login with Apple, which is their SSO thing.
Right. And that is something you have to. We've actually talked about that a little bit on the show a couple weeks ago, maybe. Where there was also another package that was talking about how to get started with Apple authentication, I think.
Yes. So yeah, this probably does not require that. It's just the WebAuthn stuff.
Yeah, which I don't understand. I mean, do you understand it well enough to give me a quick breakdown? Because I've used this before. I just don't know how it works.
I've read about it in the past, but I couldn't tell you anything about it. Yeah.
Okay. Interesting.
It is a standard published by the W3C though, so it should receive wide adoption. But other than that, I couldn't tell you any more about it. You can do some research and report back.
Maybe it's like maybe it is like a thing where your browser stores the credential for you for that site, sort of like a password manager, or maybe with its like built-in password manager sort of deal, and then your website detects if it does in fact have a credential for that site, and then says, "Oh, well, you already have it. Just give it to us, but I suppose we need to authenticate you first to figure out who you are. Use any of these physical authentication methods that you have available through the browser API, and then we'll just fill in your credential and log you in." Maybe.
Yeah,
I don't know.
I mean, you can implement it in software, and it makes use of your processor. So on the iPhone or the Apple devices, they've got the secure enclave, which I'm sure they've called something else now. I think they're not calling it the secure enclave was a good name, but I don't. And I think Windows 11, they announced that it will not run on devices that don't have this trusted platform module, which is like a physical thing that's like specifically separate to handle all this kind of stuff. So, yeah, definitely.
Oh yeah, that's what is it? It's a TPM chip.
Yeah,
they gotta have a TPM
trusted
chip.
platform module. That's correct. Yeah.
Yeah. Sorry, you knew the full name. I just knew the abbreviation.
So that's definitely not going to stifle, people upgrading to Windows 11.
Almost all the machines come with those chips anyway anymore, but
except
I think
for
people are
$3,000 Microsoft Surface or whatever that you won't be able to upgrade.
Oh, really?
To Windows
that
11,
doesn't come with it? Oh, yeah. Yikes.
And you can't upgrade it because it's an all-in-one.
Yeah, right. Exactly. That makes sense. Well, hey, folks, that's all we got for today. That's it. And what was our time, Michael? What did we hit? 40 minutes. Not bad. See, I didn't curse us. Not too bad. We had some philosophy in here. I don't know if I can call it philosophy. We had some non-Laravel stuff in here. We went deep this episode, folks. Thanks for hanging out with us. Hey, this was episode 146. If you want to find show notes for this episode, you find them at podcast.laravel-news/146. Of course, if you like the show, we'd really appreciate it if you would rate us up in your podcatcher of choice. 5 stars would be amazingly appreciated. And of course, hit us up on Twitter if you ever have any questions, comments, or hate mail at Michael Dorinda, at Jacob Bennett, or at Laravel News. You all rock. We're so thankful to have you listening. I hope you have a wonderful week. We'll see you in a couple.
See y'all.
Bye.